So, welcome everyone to my page. I'm Tammy Cho from Path to the Heart, and today I have a special guest with us, Wesley Reece. And so I'm really excited because she's going to help us learn about our sacred money archetypes today. And she's going to actually walk me through a sort of a mini reading so that you guys, the viewers, can really experience what you really learn about yourself and what you can shift in your life. So, this is really exciting. So, let me just start by introducing Wesley to everyone. And so Wesley Reece is a success coach and healer for midlife female entrepreneurs. Women hire Wesley when they're secretly stuck, but know they're meant for more and ready to create a life and business they love without exhaustion and the hustle of life. That's really important. Her clients come to her when they're done with the traditional mindset work and found it was taking way too long and still not getting the results they want. And so her mission is to transform the lives of women, empowering them to let go of stories holding them back and causing them to play small and step into their greatness unapologetically, shining their light into this world. She is the corporate dropout. I love that. Turned faith driven entrepreneur of 20 years, wife of 19 years, and mom of two busy teenagers. Welcome, Wesley.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And thanks for being here and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with all of us. And so I really want to help someone understand, what is it? What is sacred money archetypes? Because, some people may know what an archetype is, some people may not. So could you start off with just explaining what that all means?
Absolutely. Yeah, with money archetypes are really more of a universal language where, it doesn't matter what ethnicity, culture you are, we all have these inherent archetypes that we're created with, and some are more dominant than others. And it's kind of an indicator to understand yourself a little bit better so that you can actually work with your gifts and talents and your strengths and start to understand why you do what you do. And that's what's great about the sacred money archetypes. I believe, you hear the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Well, how you do money is also how you do everything. And when you're able to understand why you do what you do or why something always tends to get the best of you, you then have the power of choice. And with the power of choice to make a new decision, you then have the freedom that comes with that. And understanding your money archetype, I love it personally. And I'll tell you my story about how I got to this point. But I will tell you, growing up, I grew up with the money story of you got to work really, really hard in order to get by. It wasn't you got to work really hard to, create this life that you want. It was like, you got to work hard just to get by. And I did not realize at the time that as I was getting into adulthood, what was really how I was operating. I had this roommate in college and I couldn't understand. I was like, why is it that she just seems to be so giving and so free and just trust that everything's going to be okay? And I was the complete opposite. And I think it was because I grew up in that survival mode. And then I got married and let me back up just real quick. When I was like 8, I used to, with my grandmother, we used to do that Publishers Clearinghouse. Do you remember that? Like Publishers
No.
Clearinghouse, it was a sweepstakes where you could win all this money. And when I was young, what I thought that meant is it would solve all my problems. It would solve all the problems for my parents so that they wouldn't have to work as much and so that they would actually be there. And it's really interesting reflecting on that because even into my adulthood and when I was in like my 20s and early 30s, which was a long time ago. But when I would actually get this visceral effect when I would pass the billboard that says what the lotto numbers were for the week. It's like, oh my gosh, that would just solve all of these problems and I could do all these things. But here's the thing is that is not what I believe now. And it is completely different because when I got married, which was in my late 20s, I married my husband, came from a very different background, and he looked at money very differently. And I was like, that's interesting. And so then I started to get really curious. It's like, why is it that I've always operated in this way of holding on to every penny that I have for fear that I wouldn't be able to replace it? Even though I had great work ethic, I was successful in what I was doing, it was these old stories that I had that really created and imprinted on me what money meant. And it was very limiting. And so as I was in my 30s, I had a successful business for almost 18 years, but I plateaued in that business and I couldn't figure out why is it that I cannot get past this certain dollar threshold. And I stayed there for 7, 8 years, but I didn't know any better and I didn't have anybody to guide me. But then I started to take that next step to really figure out what is going on here. Like, why can't I seem to get past this threshold? And through that, I started to uncover what my stories were that were holding me back. And when I started my coaching practice about 5 years ago, and I was, doing sales calls and having these sales conversations, I also had a lot of money blocks that would come up in my sales conversations.
Mhm.
And it really, a mentor once said to me, if you ever want to know what you need to work on, either get into a relationship or start a business. And I do believe your business journey is a spiritual journey because it shows you what you need to work through in order to be better, do better. And so that's when I stumbled upon Sacred Money Archetypes. This was probably 3 years ago. And I really wanted to understand it for myself because I had experienced burnout in my previous business twice because I was overworking, trying to hit certain goals and get past that plateau that I didn't understand why I was struggling with it so much. And I also, in my coaching business, and even in my personal life, I had these tendencies to overgive and at the detriment of myself, of my own well-being. And just to preface, like, I believe we're all supposed to be givers. But the thing is where are you giving from? What is that place that you're giving from? Are you giving from a place of overflow? Or are you giving away something that you really don't even have yourself and you're just taking away from your reserves? And
Mhm.
so I started to really look at why do I have these consistent patterns that are really getting in my way? And
Mhm.
the Sacred Money Archetypes really started to help me understand that. And as I started to go through the process and learn how to apply this to my clients, it was a huge wake up call, even for my clients, because whether it is, and nobody's walking around saying I have a money block. However, what you are experiencing is either resistance during your sales calls. It could be inconsistent revenue months. It could be the fact that growing your business and growing, knowing that you need cash flow for your business to survive, and wondering why that cash flow is so elusive.
Mm-hmm.
These are examples of money blocks. Another example is just one that happened to me is like overgiving. That is a block, an invisible block that can get in your way and really lead to what it did for me is burnout. Because you're giving away what you don't even really have yourself. Just
Mm-hmm.
because it comes from a good place. You want to give to help people, but
Mm-hmm.
are you feeling that well for yourself first? And so what I found is there's three really common money blocks among female entrepreneurs. And one of it is overgiving. But
Mm-hmm.
another one is overworking. And that tends to show up when you have that old story of, you have to work really hard. You have to work really hard in order to achieve XYZ. And that's really relevant for those ambitious, driven high achievers. And it's very common, but it's also a narrative our society
Mm-hmm.
places on women. Like, how many women have you asked, so, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm so busy. And it's almost
Mm-hmm.
like a badge of honor. If
Yeah.
your calendar is filled to the max and, giving you relevance.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in here quickly, Wesley, because like it's really important what you're saying because most people are not connecting that overworking, this overgiving dynamic is actually a money block. And so it's really important to be highlighted here because yes, we definitely live in that society where it's like, we're rewarded for this being busy and that it's normal, like just what you're saying. So yeah, please like highlight a few more examples to help people connect that wow, if things are not working out, I'm hitting that plateau, then what else does it look like to actually have a block that we may not even be aware of?
Yeah, it could be just talking about money. That's really common. Women don't want to talk about money. It's really easy for a man to like toot their own horn, and say, "Yeah, I made 500,000 last year, and we grew our business by 300%." And guys can talk about that stuff easy, but women, it's a little bit different story, and that also shows up in sales conversations.
Mhm.
Being able to state your fees. Um, I had a client, not too long ago, we went through my money mastery program together, and she began to understand why she had so much hesitation in not just stating her fees on a sales call, but also using her voice and sharing about her achievements and how she could help, and empowering her voice to be able to communicate and talk about money in a way that you're not getting this anxiety within you, or this fear that, oh my gosh, they're going to say no. um it, you know it's very common. And so, like, that particular example, um what can they see is when they have this fear of stating their fees on a sales call, they may discount their services, or they may not be charging enough for the value that they're providing, or they extend the invitation to the prospective client on the other end, and they immediately jump in and say, oh, but for you today, you can have 40% off and we can get going or whatever. It's not honoring and understanding your value because you may fear it may not be understood or appreciated on the other side. And
Mm-hmm.
so one very unique angle that I approach this with clients is that not only do we do the go through the sacred money archetypes, I also incorporate healing and empowerment works, the spiritual aspect to the
Mm-hmm.
money awareness, because what I've found is significant shifts happen when you pair that together. Because when you add that healing and empowerment work, what happens is that the action that you would have hesitated on before becomes a non-issue. You just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I want people to understand is that if they're hesitating, taking certain actions, so whether it is hesitating, putting themselves out there to promote their business, or um, another thing that working on these money blocks really helps is promoting yourself and not feeling salesy, not feeling awkward. It takes the resistance out. And that's the beauty of adding that spiritual healing work to the sacred money archetypes. So what happens when someone begins to um, take the step and start to understand their sacred money archetype is they begin to take back that power, because there's always that yin and the yang. You have your innate strengths, but you also have that challenging piece that goes along with it. And I'm so excited you're going to run through this with your own reading and give an example for everybody, because your strengths will always overpower the challenges. But here's the thing is sometimes those challenges, they're just louder. They're more in your face. And
Mm-hmm.
then it starts to be consuming and you forget, oh, by the way, I'm really great at trusting myself, my decisions, trusting other people. I'm really resilient. I know I can get through anything. And so being able to lean in to that innate strength
Mm-hmm.
allows you to feel that you have more of that power of choice, which creates the freedom which I've referred to
Yeah,
earlier.
that
But yeah, so the beauty of the sacred money archetypes is that you don't feel like money is controlling you like it used to.
mm-hmm.
You feel more authentic and aligned, and
Mm-hmm.
and more just that feeling that it's because that hesitation and that resistance is
Mm-hmm.
no longer the issue that it used to be.
Yeah, well, that sounds beautiful to be like more empowered in the strengths versus like all the challenges and noise that comes up. And I'm through everything you're saying, I'm seeing that like this goes deep into a lot of stories and back into our childhood upbringing, and it's come full circle in our life, and it comes up in a way, especially if it's often we don't look at things until something is off or wrong, or we're not creating the impact or income we want, right? And so I'm hearing that, yeah, we really got to look a little deeper within ourselves. And you're highlighted some of the wonderful symptoms that, we may not actually connect to that being a challenge. And yet it highlights through all these different ways in how we create abundance in our life. And so we may think that when we're struggling with things in sales that we need to look into, the mindset or like develop our skill set. And what I'm hearing from you is that we got to look a little deeper, and how you shine your gifts into the world is helping someone learn about themselves through the sacred money archetype. And then you work with someone to, yeah, really bring in, your gifts and the healing and the empowerment piece. And so that sounds wonderful and beautiful. Like, and I love to jump in to just highlight for people exactly what this is and how it looks like, because it's like hearing it and versus experiencing it is often very different. And so, why don't we dive right in?
Absolutely. So what happens, and so for the viewers can understand, is that there is this assessment, Sacred Money Archetype assessment that I sent to Tammy. It takes about 8 minutes to complete. And then when you have your results, you take your top three highest ranking archetypes, because there is eight, and they all play some part of a role. But it's the combination of the top three results that you're able to start to understand what's at play. And so with Tammy, she ranked her top three. Her number one was she's a connector, and she loves connecting people together, helping create that long-term relationship, and that can also lead to greater income, greater impact. And as I take Tammy through this, I'm going to take her through it as if this was a one-on-one call that typically it takes about 15 minutes for a customized reading. But I'm going to take Tammy through this based on her results, and we'll see what she has to say.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
excited to learn more about myself.
yeah. Well, I will tell you, you've got that inner relationship connector about yourself. That is your number one core piece of who you are. And from there, what shines is your innate faith and optimism you have about the world, about people. You know, you you tend to care more about the heart to heart connections, sometimes more than about the actual making the money for your business. Would that ring true?
Yeah, I've definitely been on that path and journey around that. And yeah, this when I did my test, it's like the connector came out like well, a number of 34. So it when I went through it, it's all these questions. And what I like about it is that I couldn't figure out what it was connected to. It's like some quizzes you do, you kind of know that there's categories, but I love how this when I did it, it was very much I couldn't get in my head about it besides just answering the questions. So I love that. And I got 34 for connector, which was very different. Well, it's far apart from the other ones, which my second one was alchemist, 27. And so yeah, I would say that connector, and just to come back to your question, because I wanted to share my experience with taking this quick like 8-minute thing that I did. And yeah, I would say that connecting has been one of the things that has definitely run my life in many ways. And I actually even had to open up into more of myself in that. And so and now it's like creating that focus and helping people and creating the income is definitely unraveling and coming into life for me now. So
Nice. Yeah. And so as a connector, and we're going to blend in your how your alchemist may be showing up, and then accumulator. And sometimes they can show up in various ways. And so we'll touch on that. But as a connector, tell me, like, you know, um, do you ever find yourself, because your accumulator ranks in third, and that's your inner banker. And the inner banker really lights up when there's that respect and appreciation about money. But sometimes as a connector, you can be happy when somebody else is making the decisions. Or it could be as a connector that you find yourself avoiding certain money conversations, just hoping that it'll work itself out. Um, tell me, does any of that ring true?
Yeah, I would say like in the beginning part of my journey, it was all I married a man that made a lot of the decisions and he was a financial advisor. So I definitely attracted that into my life and had someone make all those decisions for me. And so yeah, I was really being conscious of that and stepping into that place of empowerment in my life for sure.
Yeah, because as an accumulator, it probably made your heart sing when your husband had that um brought that to the table. Because as an accumulator, it could be that, you're careful to live below your means, and you have this great emotional connection to when you're able to save money, it kind of like lights you up, but it's not your number one. And so um when you bring in the alchemist into the picture, and I'm going to weave these in a second, but the alchemist is all about ideas. And they love to create change and bring new. And they tend to be attracted to unconventional ways to make money, and they find it really easy to empower um, others to believe in themselves and to think of the possibility. Um, but when we're looking at the downside to being an alchemist, is the alchemists can tend to have a love-hate relationship with money, or feel like they never seem to have enough to support all these causes and ideas that they want to bring to life. How does that land for you?
Yeah, definitely about empowerment and helping, my clients definitely return to the true essence and to live from a place of empowerment of their strengths. And so I would say that is definitely true. And what you're saying about change and new, I mean, this definitely is a almost something that was it's just recently birthed into me a bit more where I'm actually embodying it. And the piece, and just quickly remind me the last piece because I was trying to like keep notes in my head around the challenge part of it. Like,
Yeah, like, you may feel like you never seem to have enough money to support all the causes that are important to you.
yeah, it's not enough money to support the causes. Yeah, I think that's I mean I haven't created a big cause that I'm wanting to put money into. Like I don't know how this translates otherwise. Is there another way that that translates?
Like the ideas that you have, and all of the maybe different ways that you can create positive change.
Um, all the different ways I could create positive change to create income from that. Did I
Mhm.
get that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's like having ideas and then coming to fruition in a more strategic or aligned way to create income. Like I could see that that's definitely my path. Um, um, yeah, in my path and sort of creating sort of flow in that. But I'm really noticing I'm just focusing on sort of one right now because otherwise all these ideas I could see would take me off on a tangent, So
And
yeah, so maybe
that's
that's
the
why.
that's where the downside comes in, and that feeling of love hate. It's great when it's there so you can put these ideas into action, but then when it's not there, you're like, oh, that's really important to me and I can't do that right now.
Mhm.
And which can conflict with that inner banker, just because sometimes that they put a lot of thought into where they put their money, and they like to have that nest egg. And so it can conflict with the inner alchemist, because they have these ideas that they want to act on, but then the inner banker says, oh, wait a minute, we need to think about this a little bit more, because we, have this nest egg and it's not necessarily meant for that, kind of thing. And so when you're looking at Your connector and your accumulator, there's a lot of trust there, because the connector trusts that their ability to create the relationships that will generate the income, which makes the accumulator happy because then they have this nest egg. They're able to feel comfortable and secure. Um,
Mm,
but the alchemist has, because of all these ideas, they like to create change and be more daring, which can cause conflict, I would say, with that inner banker. But
mm,
because you're so strong in that connector, you trust those decisions that you have, and you know that with any challenge that comes up, that you are resilient. And so your gifts are really, because you're such a strong connector, your gifts are so strong in knowing and trusting your capability to create the relationships you need to either support your ideas, um, or to generate the income so that you can create more of a nest egg and feel that financial responsibility piece. How
mhm.
does that resonate?
Yeah, I can really see the different connections. Like I can see like the light side and the shadow side of like, focusing on my skills as a connector, building relationship, having these ideas, fulfilling them in my relationships, to create them, and then having maybe a tug of war with that, the accumulator, the saver, the inner banker, as you say, to see, oh, okay, well, is that in alignment, and is that, change requires investment sometimes, like for example. And so, yeah, I can see how this dynamic can play out in this way. And yeah, and so and this is interesting because as I'm hearing these things for the first time, I'm processing within myself, and I'm also guided to ask the question in the sense that, so how does one flow with this to to start the path of shifting their money, um what do you call it, maybe money mindset, or how we relate to the money. And yeah, so how do you support clients and moving through this realization, and of course, if you feel like there's still something incomplete with what you want to share in these connections, please go ahead. But that's what's in my mind to sort of ask you for sure.
Well, as a connector, I would say one of the greatest challenges you can experience as a connector is that lack of financial independence because you're so focused on the value of the relationships. And
Mhm.
so having that disconnect between being able to feel independent and financially secure, it can feel off at times. But that's also where your accumulator can come in and balance it out and be happy because they do have that financial, um, independent piece and security that can help balance out the connector. Now, as an alchemist, some of the downside can also be, um, you know, just discounting or rebelling, in creating money goals or habits, which makes the connector really happy because she's focused on the relationship. And so she's like, "Oh, that's okay, alchemist. We don't need to make any money goals or habits, but it can really make the accumulator mad because that's what drives her." Does that make sense?
So the alchemist part of me may kind of get into ideas in a bit, airy fairy land or spiritual land, versus actually making that part of me that wants to save money slash maybe create income side of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might kind of like have an argument in my head.
Right. And so when you're experiencing that resistance, it's probably because, um, well, depending on who's showing up to the party. Is it your inner banker that really is great at, those financial decisions and creating that nest egg? Or is it the creator that doesn't want to focus on that stuff because that's just, the first thing to be pushed off to the side because we can do that later? And that resistance that's created because of those two are at odds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I can see that sort of playing out, in my head for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is that when I take somebody through this process, the reading is really just to start to understand who's at play here.
Mhm.
Because if you're experiencing a lot of resistance in with money, whether it's money conversations, money habits, whether it is just don't even want to look at your bank account. But the inside of you is just like screaming because you can't ignore that, but you're not sure that you even want to look at it. So these are just like general examples, but being
Mhm.
able to have the awareness just from who is at play with your archetypes and who's running the show can actually help address why are you experiencing resistance, what's creating that block that if you lean into the strengths, like for you, like that you're trusting, that you are resilient, you can get through anything. And if you need to come up with ideas to create um, um, money and opportunity, that you can do that and you can leverage your relationships to grow that, which will make the accumulator happy. But if there's a disconnect because the connector's so focused on nurturing those relationships and really, you know, not converting that into income opportunities, it can really make that accumulator feel at odds. And so as we go through this, the first piece is just this reading, which is complimentary to anyone that takes the assessment, but it is to have that awareness. And then I have a series of exercises that we go through together one-on-one, where it as we're going through it, we understand, why is this at play and what needs to shift. Either is it a fear? Is it doubt, uncertainty? Is it just this frustration because one part of you doesn't want to look at the financial piece because you just want to focus on building and your audience and helping people and giving value and nurturing those relationships, and then that can be at odds. And so empowering yourself, empowering your voice, and really understand the whole picture and what's at play, and healing any limiting beliefs that come up that aren't serving. Limiting beliefs do mean that yes, they're not serving you. And even if it served you back in your 20s and it doesn't now, well, that needs to shift. And so that we do that work together so that you can get on the other side and not be apprehensive about asking for payment, or not be apprehensive with you know making a certain financial decision, or you know sharing sharing what you're charging for a particular program, because that the value is there. And so I take a client through a series of purposeful exercises that have been proven with thousands and thousands of people that have gone through the process. And when they do, is you begin to really come from that empowered place and that resistance. It Let me ask you this. Say if you were experiencing a particular resistance and um, you know, talking about having money conversations, or state like the example I use, stating your fees, or even just having a money conversation with your spouse, and just being able to get through that in a very healthy, productive way. These the 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 work that we do helps release that resistance, and so that your
Mhm.
emotion is no longer getting in your way.
Mhm.
I like to say, a lot of programs out there, very strategy focused, and then they say, and they're all the strategies work. And then they say, well, if you're not getting the results that you need, then you should do the mindset work. Well, there's a certain point that if you're not getting that result that you want and you're doing the mindset work, there's something bigger at play, like we talked about before. And I believe that mindset's not the problem. We've got the tools. It's the emotions that are the problem that are standing in the way, because your brain wants to avoid the pain and it's drawn to pleasure. And if something
Mhm.
is foreseen is going to put you at risk or not feel safe, not keep you in your comfort zone, you're going to avoid it. And
Mhm.
so the longer you avoid it, the more that stirring and resistance goes on within you, and it becomes more of a mountain than it's more of an illusion of a mountain than it
Mhm.
is in reality.
Yeah,
Um,
Wesley, as someone that sort of teaches about emotional leadership, I totally, resonate with what you're saying in the sense of like often it is a little deeper. And so, yeah, thank you so much for walking me through my top three, because it really sort of helped me see like this inner dynamic that's sort of present in me. And I would say that's not something that I would definitely look for on a regular basis within myself. Like I actually, I did this test a long time ago, and I don't remember all of the ones, but my first one was connector. So definitely I'm still hitting that. And that's given me like, yeah, my strength and how to create more income with really building that piece for myself, but also realizing the shadow piece and how it interrelates with all the other ones that came up. So, um, yeah, and the purpose of what I'm passionate about is bringing people, yes, together to, but also to really discover deeper parts of ourselves, because we are more empowered when we actually see and understand ourselves and come really real face to face with what that exact dynamic is happening. And so I can see how this is not, beautifully specific to money. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a big part of everyone's path. And so I think what you do is very beautiful and powerful. And Wesley, if people want to sort of get in touch with you, like I heard you say that there's something on your website where they could take this for free, this easy assessment for free. And I recommend everyone to do that. So is that where you would like to guide people to, yeah, if they want to sort of get in touch with you?
yeah, absolutely. My website is wesleyreece.co. And if you want to access the assessment, you can go wesleyreece.co back backslash
Yeah.
money code. And so you can download the assessment for yourself and we can do a customized reading for you. But I say awareness is the first step, because if you can control what you're aware of, but if you're not aware of something, it controls you. And in a lot of the cases, when it comes to money behaviors, you're not aware of really what's at play. And so it can feel like it's controlling you. And so being able to have that understanding, like you said, and to really be able to learn what it is for you so that you can really take that step for better. It's very empowering, and there's a lot of freedom that goes along with it. And so I just want that for everybody. I truly believe it's those stories, those old stories that are holding us back, and to heal past them and feel that new sense of empowerment to make that new decision is where our power lies. So
Mm,
it is possible, and we're here to support you on that. So thank you for having me
yes.
today, Tam. It was really great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, no, thank you for doing this mini reading. And so people can just see more of what you do and really sort of understand it, like how it could really make a difference for them. And I just want to just touch base with you. Is there any last words that you feel like you have, or you feel fairly complete?
Yeah, I just want my mission is to really help transform the lives of women because I think that women are capable of so much, and there's there's a lot of things and a lot of stories that can hold us back, and we can sabotage our best efforts without even really understanding why or really what's going on. And so being able to shed light on that so that you can really take that step, and so that you can help those people that are waiting for you to show up and to step into your greatness, because you were created with greatness and it's time to let it shine. And so I just wanted to leave the listeners with that little tidbit because it is truth, and I want that for everyone that is willing to take that step. So thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. We're totally in alignment there. So thank you for sharing your gifts. And please reach out to Wesley. It's WesleyReece / money code to get your quick little quiz on yourself so you could really open up a wealth of wisdom for yourself and to really get to know yourself. And yeah, to connect with Wesley if you resonate with what she's shared with us today. Thank you so much, Wesley, for being here. And yeah, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. It was a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it. Thank you.